Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn, and I'm here with author Travis Kennedy to talk about his debut novel, The WHYTE PYTHON World Tour. Welcome to the show, Travis.
Thanks so much for having me, Tracy.
Oh, my pleasure. This was such a fun book. This has to be the most unique spy thriller I've ever read. It's funny. There is a sweetness to it as well as suspense. And then there's that there's a great deal of that nostalgia for those of
Yeah.
us who remember the 80s. And I'm trying to figure out how you pulled all of that off.
I surprised myself that it all fit in about 400 pages. I think that I think that the key principle for me was writing a fun satire of a rock biography that steers into a spy thriller. And as long as I kept track of the story from beginning to end, it never felt like I was cramming too much in there. But it is, it's attempting to do a lot. So I'm glad to hear that it worked for you.
It absolutely did. And I don't often ask authors where they get their ideas, but I
Mhm.
can't help myself with this one because it's just I guess I'm just very curious how if you recall the moment that sparked this idea of creating a heavy metal drummer spy.
I do. It starts when I'm 8 years old, watching MTV when I
Uh,
probably wasn't supposed to be, and just getting such a kick out of the glam metal bands and their videos, and the lives they were living, and a lot of the subtext of their music went over my head. I just saw these real life Muppets who were wearing funny costumes and acting like animals in their videos, and they were so funny, and it was like accessible to kids as long as we weren't listening to the lyrics too closely. So I was always just entertained by musicians of the era and of this genre. And then about 20 years ago, I picked up an autobiography. I think the first one that I read might have been Slash's. And I went on to read a few since then because I picked up on this element of the lives of a lot of these hairband guys, which is that the version we saw on stage in videos of these larger than life party animals, like the cool kids on the back of the bus, was not the lives that they lived. Almost all of them. I mean, there were some exceptions, but for the most part, these guys were misfits. They were,
mm,
they grew up in really challenging families and childhoods, and a lot of them, got kicked out of school and didn't have good jobs, and people had just kind of counted them out. And then they found each other, and they
mm.
unlocked these superpowers when they started to play music together. And it just happened over and over again. I was reading these books and thinking this is like an underdog sports story about the Mighty Ducks, and the right coach finds their skills, and then all of a sudden they're on top of the world, and they didn't have any of the skills for it or any guardrails. And of course, their exploits were entertaining and tragic, and their
Yeah.
lives were so much bigger than life. So I felt like there was a cool story to be told that was not a behind the music expose. That was, what's the adventure here? These
Hmm.
guys are like this, are the Avengers, and if their one skill is partying and playing music. And so then about 5 years ago, uh, I heard a podcast called Wind of Change, and an investigative reporter who's amazing. His name is Patrick Radden Keefe. He does a lot of work with the New Yorker, but he's done these fantastic books about the drug industry and Northern Ireland. He's just an amazing investigator. Caught on to a long-held theory that the CIA wrote the song Wind of Change for the Scorpions at the end of the Cold War to help usher democracy into the Eastern Bloc nations.
Oh,
And,
interesting.
the podcast is great, and it's entertaining, and he does such a good job exploring the era and the music. But of course, you can't prove it. It's the CIA. If they don't say yes, you can never prove it. So I thought that's the story. If I just separate myself from any responsibility to reality and make it a fiction book, then I have this adventure I've been looking to write in the hair metal genre forever. And this is what it is, because it makes so much sense. They're were willing to live in the worst conditions. They were really
Yeah.
creative and hardworking, but you'd never guess any of that. They were so underestimated that I thought, whether it's true or not, these guys would make amazing spies. And so the story, that the story existed, and the elements of the characters I felt like I had figured out, and then I just went. I mean, I wrote it the first draft so fast, and was just off and running.
Yeah, there was I can really say as you were talking about that, it was that's such a great kind of origin story that you mentioned there. But when you were talking about these kind of misfits found each
Mhm.
other, and that's how Rikki and, do I have the name right? Ron found each other
Ron,
in
yeah, yeah.
school. Yeah, I thought
Mhm.
that was one of my favorite scenes there. And you were talking about that they didn't really care how they lived. They were just, interested in making music,
Yeah.
which you find out in the book where these guys are, yeah, especially when he's with Quicksand, where these where these
Yeah.
guys are living. It's like,
Live in
oh,
an
I
abandoned paint
just like
store.
I didn't want to touch anything. It's so fun. It's just so fun. But before we dive further into White Python, why don't we pause here just a little bit? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing journey?
Oh, sure. I've been writing since I was a little kid. I mean, I think I was 6 when I wrote a poem that won a kindergarten contest, and that was it. I mean, like Rikki getting the record player on his 12th birthday, winning a contest at 6 years old got me going on my life of writing and my love of it. So I wrote a lot as a kid and as a teenager. And then I got a job in government and politics, and it was just all consuming, and all of my creative energy was going into my work for a long time. But then, as my career changed and I started to, I got married and had kids, and where I was going to work every day became less demanding. This is probably about, 10, 12, 15 years ago, I guess. I started to come back around to writing again. And so, I started small. I started with really short fiction and sending it to the smallest publications I could find and getting told no. And then you start to get yes, right? I mean, I think that you're a writer, you understand this
Yeah.
whole business is designed to chase out people who aren't willing to keep hearing no, but keep trying anyway. And so it was just this journey of working my way up from the smallest publications to getting told no a little bit less and getting told yes a little bit more by the bigger ones. And then it was time to write a book. And so I wrote a book and I finished it and started submitting it around to agents in New York in February 2020. Now, take a moment to think about what was going on
Oh,
in February
yeah.
2020 in New York. They were
Yeah,
running for their
timing.
lives. And so they were, I mostly just didn't really hear back from anybody. Um, but I kind of put the book aside and said, okay, I've been told no 1,000 times. I know what to do. Start with something else, come back to it. But at the last minute, I saw a contest that was sponsored by Screencraft, and it was most cinematic book. And this is not White Python. This is a different novel that I wrote.
Hmm.
And they host these huge contests. They get thousands of entries. And I thought, well, I might as well I have the $50. I'm just going to enter it and see what happens. Maybe I'll make it through the first round. And so I submitted it and I kind of forgot about it. And then I made it through the first round. And then I made the quarterfinals. Then I made the semifinals. And then I won the whole damn thing. And there were like 1,400
Nice.
books, and some of them have been
Wow.
published. And so all of a sudden, this book that had been in the desk drawer won this contest. And one of the judges is an editor with HarperCollins. And she said, "You need an agent. I'm going to help you find an agent." And she
Oh,
did.
nice.
And so my agent and I have been off and running ever since. That book, you will see it, but over the course of working together and the development of White Python, and White Python's development as a movie at the same time, the momentum just said this one has to go first. So
Yeah.
the benefit, as I'm sure you know, of sometimes a very drawn out publishing schedule meant that I had the time working with my team and my publisher to say, let's do this first. This is the one to launch with, and let's go all in. And in the meantime, I've just had time to sort of keep building my cachet of work, so we're ready to keep
Yeah.
going, you know.
Oh, that's
Uh,
great. That's great. That's nice because you can get ahead of the game where you don't feel like you're constantly butting up against the deadline all the time, which, some authors do. And so,
yeah.
no, that's great. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's an amazing story. I really, really love that. Um, so for White Python,
Mhm.
I've seen the novel described as Spinal Tap meets Austin Powers, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you agree with that or not, but I got a kick out of that.
You know what my
Ki-
favorite one, oh sorry,
yeah,
my
go,
favorite
no, go ahead.
one that I think
Uh,
is spot on is Top Secret meets Spinal Tap.
okay,
So
okay. Yeah,
so you're
yeah.
getting
I
like the
like
80s
that's
spy
good.
adventure too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, do you want to give us your quick overview or elevator pitch of what you believe the book is about for
Sure.
our listeners?
Sorry. Um, So the one sentence summary is that the CIA recruits a hairband to help bring down the Eastern Bloc through the power of rock. A little bit more context. So we're following Rikki Thunder, who is he's in his early 20s, living in the Sunset Strip in the mid 80s, playing with a garage band that's going nowhere, but having the time of his life. Like you said, he's living in
Yeah.
squalor, but he doesn't think he's living in squalor. He's living like a rock star with his
Yeah.
buddies, and their music isn't very good, but they're having a blast. And then he meets the woman of his dreams, and all of a sudden, everything in his life just keeps getting better. This girlfriend fills the club with people so full that the fire marshal gets called, and they start to play bigger clubs, and just everything that he wants to happen just keeps happening, and he's kind of too dim-witted to realize that maybe there are some strings being pulled on his behalf. And so, as it turns out, there are. And before long, Rikki has been moved from his garage band to White Python, which is this up and coming Van Halen style band at just the right moment before they take off. And they take off like a rocket, and all of a sudden he's living the real rock star life. And then we discover that one of largely what's driving White Python's early success is that there are plans for them to be brought in as a psyop in the Eastern Bloc region to help end the Cold War. And so Rikki has become this unwitting CIA asset, and we're off and running. And so it does shift over the course of the book from a satire, a comedy of a rock biography, to a satire of a Cold War spy thriller.
Yeah, yeah. Even in some of the suspenseful moments, there's places that you just had me cracking up, and I really want to talk about them, but I know that I can't because I'll be doing some spoilers there. But Ricky, before he got into quicksand, he had kind of a difficult childhood, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
there was one moment whenever he was in foster care where this guy made a difference in his life. Really kind
Yeah.
of turned his life around, and we hear that
Mhm.
through Ricky's thoughts in the book. Um, I don't know if you can if that would be a spoiler to talk about that
Yeah,
or
I don't think so. I mean, I'm
okay.
still learning what a spoiler is, and
Yes,
this
me
is my
too.
debut. So I'm
I'm
thinking, what
so
can I tell you
careful.
that people will still buy the book to read? But that's like
Right.
chapter 4 or 5. Yes, I mean, Ricky. Uh, was a kid who was put up for adoption the day after he was born in Southern California, and he bounced around from foster home to foster home. And this is early in the book when I still thought I might be writing a sort of cynical story about, being people being used by whether it's the CIA or the music industry, and these sort of hard, filthy musicians. And very quickly, that's just not who Rikki wanted to be. And by the time I wrote that chapter, it became a completely different book. Like you said before, there's a sweetness to it, there's a heart to it. He's just a person who the bad circumstances never break him, and he remains an optimist. And he's kind of a dummy, but in the best possible way. He's trusting
Yeah.
and he's sweet. And so on his 12th birthday, in a classic terrible situation that he's become very used to in his foster home, he comes across a nice stranger who just commits a random act of kindness. And that was really important to me, that he didn't meet a famous musician. He didn't get adopted by a music industry exec. A nice guy who was a plumber saw a kid who was hurting, and he did something nice for him.
Yeah.
And then we see the whole life that came out of it, and the effects of that life. Not only that he became a celebrity and a musician, but he helped win the Cold War because somebody just thought to be nice to a kid. And so that was when the book changed for me, where I thought, this is just a person who did a nice thing, and maybe we can all think about that, and what a
Yeah.
difference that it can make, for
Yeah.
somebody who, when you see, I think I have something that costs me nothing to give you, and if I do it, who knows where you'll go, and even if you don't become a rock star, maybe it'll help. So that was on the other end of chapter 5. It was a whole different book for me in the best way.
Yeah, yeah. I recall somebody doing a random act of kindness for me in a similar way, and it does affect you in such a
Yeah.
positive way, and it is a turning. It wasn't as big of a turning point for me as it was for Rikki, but
Mm.
it was a turning point, and so that really touched me, and I'm so thankful that you did a little wrap up at the end there too
Yeah.
for that storyline. I won't say anymore. So, just out of curiosity, what do you hope readers think about long after they've closed the covers
Yeah.
of White Python?
Yeah, I mean, as much as this is a fun R-rated comic adventure, um, I was taken aback by what happened. And again, writer to writer, it sounds crazy when we tell people, the story wrote itself and I just pulled it out of the air. And it ended up being something different than I thought it was, but it's because I wasn't in control of it anymore. Um, I thought I was just going to tell a fun diversion, and it is. But um, I think that the message, the hope that I hope people come away from it with is, you know, the, everybody's got something. Everybody's got a superpower or a skill or a reason to be worthy and feel worthy, and you just have to find it. You have to keep trying. And look, I'm a 45-year-old t-ball coach in Maine who didn't stop writing until it worked for me. And so these guys in the band, but then it carries on this. It sort of infects everybody who they touch, of people who are oddballs and misfits who, their CIA handlers come together and sort of change their goals because they're inspired by the work they're doing. And then people living in fascist regimes in the Eastern Bloc are motivated by the music that they hear. And so I think the thing I hope people leave with is, you have something special in you, and don't let anybody tell you that you don't, or discount you because you don't fit in. Find your people, and do your best, and remember that, doing something kind for somebody is far more likely to change the world than doing something nasty.
Beautiful. No, that's great. That's great. Well, when you're a debut author, you're
Mhm.
exposed to a lot of firsts.
Yeah.
Your first agent, your first contract, your first book reveal, first
Mhm.
interview.
Yeah.
So many firsts. What has been your most joyful first as a brand new author?
Mm. Um, I remember when I won that contest and had no idea where it was going to take me. I just won something. I remember just having a dance party with my family, and we were just celebrating that I won this thing, and we didn't even know that it would result in a phone call with one of the judges.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat that. You're right. They're all exciting. They're all thrilling. We had the book
Yes.
launch party last night at a
Oh,
little
nice.
bookstore in Portland, Maine, and they ordered 60 copies, and the party ended because they sold them all. And that was so meaningful. So many people that I know from so many walks of life showed up. That's going to be a tough one to beat too. I mean, I know there will be
Yeah.
a second one and a third one, but the first time you do these things and you see people come out for you and support you, either because they don't know you at all and they loved the work, or because they've known you forever and they want this for you, is really amazing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. There's nothing quite like the first book. They're all exciting, but there's just something super special about
Mhm.
book one. So I'm very happy for you. That's
Oh,
great.
thank you.
So I'm just changing gears a little bit, going behind
Mhm.
the scenes a
Yeah.
smidge about the author himself, Travis here. Um, Writing requires long hours, as I'm sure you figured out, although it sounds like you wrote this book very quickly, but it requires long hours behind the keyboard. Do you
Mhm.
have any tips for folks on how to keep themselves or keep yourself healthy?
Yeah. My challenge, not challenge, my richness in my life is I have two young kids and a wife, and I've had busy, active careers that have inspired and moved me for years. And so it has always been a matter of sneaking it in the margins.
Yeah.
And I literally wrote chapters of this book sitting in my daughter's room waiting for her to go to sleep because she
Oh,
thought she heard something under the bed, and so I just sat there with my phone writing. And I do think, especially when you're starting, I'm now in a position where this is my full-time job, and so I have an office and space and time.
yeah.
Those are benefits I never had before, literally a week ago. And so I think the best advice I can give you is you're never going to have the perfect circumstances where you have silence and just the right room that's just the right temperature, and no chance that you'll be interrupted and that the muse will be working. Those things are almost never going to happen. You can't wait for them to materialize before you start. Pull out your phone and take notes. There's a novelist, TJ Newman, who's written these blockbuster books uh, about planes. She was a flight attendant,
Yeah.
and she wrote notes on napkins while she was in between service. That's You hear this all the
Amazing.
time from people who
Mhm.
finally get there. You write when you have an idea and 10 minutes to scribble an idea down, and then you come back to it and hone it later. But never wait for the moment to write. Just do it when it's there.
All right. Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. Have you read a book recently that you've really loved and maybe would recommend to our listeners?
Oh, lots of them. Let me point at another Maine author who's phenomenal. There's a guy named Ron Curry who he has just changed gears into crime fiction. He wrote a book called "The Savage Noble Death of Babs Dion." Very different from White Python, just a fantastic gritty crime saga. If you love Don Winslow and Dennis Lehane
Mm,
and the sort of
yeah.
more operatic work that they've done, Ron Curry, The Savage Noble Death of Babs Dion is great. I don't really know him, but I've followed his work a long time, and it's just
Yeah.
fantastic.
I'm just super impressed that you could remember the title. That's a really long, great title.
Especially, you know what Pub Week is like. My brain is
Yeah,
mush, so that's how much I
absolutely.
liked his book.
And then when people ask you kind of, unexpectedly, oh, what book have you read recently?
Yeah.
I always go blank. So I'm super
Oh,
impressed here.
good.
All right. Well, before we go, can you tell us what's up next for you? You gave some hints there,
Mhm.
but it sounds like you already have your sophomore. Actually, this might be your sophomore book since you finished
Yeah,
one
it's so
before
hard to
this. If
say.
I, yeah.
So a lot at once. The White Python World Tour came out on June 24th, and it's being developed as a feature film by
Oh,
Paramount. And I mean,
yay. Yeah.
we're cautious
Wonderful.
when we say these things, but we have a
Yes.
screenwriter who is finishing his first draft right now, and a great production company working on it. So we're hopeful. The book that I wrote first is called Welcome to Redemption. You will see it soon. Also in development as a series, but I can't say anything more than that yet. So there's a,
Yeah.
those things are keeping me busy. And I'm working on a book now that will be more of a direct follow-up, not in the same world as White Python, but the same tone.
Okay.
That I'm cautious to say anything about. It's still in that infancy stage where I'm
Yeah.
afraid to say
Yeah.
anything because I might break it. But
Yeah.
I'm really excited about where it's going. So,
All
and I
right.
think eventually you'll see more adventures from Rikki Thunder. There's
Okay.
always a
All
plan
right.
to take that story out of the 80s. So I got a lot of
Okay.
work to do.
No, that's fun. I hope we I hope we hear more of that voice.
Yeah.
It was such a fun voice to listen to and read, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more from you for
Oh,
sure,
good.
for sure.
Yeah. I miss writing as Rikki. It genuinely cheered me up every time I had to do a new revision, which is such a rare thing for an author to say. You get notes and usually you'd be like,
Right.
oh God, this again. But my mood just improved every time I spent time in the White Python world. It was such a fun
You like
place
his
to
world.
write.
No, that's
Yeah.
great. That's great. It's a good place to be. All right.
Mhm.
Well, folks, when this episode airs, the White Python World Tour will be out, so be sure to order your copy today. You can check out Travis's website at traviskennedy.com. And as a bonus, be sure to visit
Mhm.
whitepython.com, where you can find fun character interviews. They're a blast, especially yeah, they're so much fun. And there's also a Spotify playlist on there, which
Mhm.
I noticed there wasn't a track on there from Whitesnake. I was a little, White Python, Whitesnake. I
Yeah, they
thought
didn't
there
make the
might
cut.
be one on there.
Well, you
Yeah,
may
yeah.
remember, Tracy, there's a little bit of friction about the name that the guys get into in the book. They think White
Oh,
Snake is a little bit too vague. You might as well call the band White Animal. So
that's
I think that they, as much as I like White Snake,
yeah.
I don't think that the guys in White Python would
All
want them on
right.
the
All
playlist.
right. I got it. Okay, I see now. I see now. I was curious about that. That's great.
Mhm.
All right, Travis. Well, what social media platform are you most active on?
Probably Facebook, the social media platform of the middle-aged. So Kennedy Writing is the handle there, and Instagram, same
Okay.
thing.
Okay, great. Kennedy
Kennedy
writing.
Writing. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Well, thanks a ton, Travis. It was such a pleasure to read this debut. I can't believe it's a debut. It's just so amazing, and I'm really looking forward to readers getting it in their hands. And yeah, and I'll keep an eye on your social to see some of the fun, cool things that you've got going on with this book and the next. So,
Awesome. Great.
congratulations.
Thanks so much, Tracy.
You bet. Many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll be back soon with another great read.